Scott, thank you so much for coming to our podcast. I really appreciate you coming on. For everyone at home who doesn't know Scott, he's very famous in the military scene, but for people who watched our podcast in the military who might not know, Scott is the founder of Esprit de Corps. I'll show you guys this one. This is your latest one.
That was our current Women in Defense issue, yeah.
Yeah, current Women of Defense issue. So it was a big push. We were just taking a look at them, how everyone's getting plaques now.
Well, I mean, again, we've got our 36th anniversary logo on now. We've been around for 36 years.
Yeah,
we started this in 88. And
88.
At 27 years old.
At 27 years old.
Magazine, I mean,
good for you.
The idea that I'd be still doing it all these years later, I would have said, you got to be crazy, but no intention to stop anytime soon. But I mean, it's just.
They're very nice. They're good quality magazines. They look good. They're very, very nice. Good quality. People who are in advertisement know this is a good quality magazine.
They got the heft.
They got the heft.
I mean, yeah, it's keeping a magazine alive when the print.
Yes,
print world is disappearing. I mean, a lot of people are disappearing. We've been able to keep it going, completely independent. And
yes.
So my wife and I own the whole company. That part gives us the flexibility, which we are trying to evolve, and we always have.
Yes.
We're now realizing that as a medium, perhaps this is limited in its scope. Young generations are not reading, and they're certainly not reading lengthy features in magazines per se. I mean, it's all quick, instant gratification. So we have created our own YouTube channel, and we're creating video content weekly.
Yes.
Which we intend to increase that to get more of our content up as video, but it's just a slow process, and we've learned that lesson as well.
Yeah.
Don't grow too quick ever.
Yes. Yes, of course.
The banks are always happy to loan you the money.
Yeah, exactly. Don't pay me back.
And then they own you. Yes.
Yeah.
No offense to any
the
bankers
banking
out there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we all kind of work for them at one point. Your YouTube channel, is it called Esprit de Corps, or is it called
So it's On Target.
On Target.
It is a Esprit de Corps channel. It's
Yep.
Esprit de Corps, but the shows are called On Target. We have others, industry updates and things which we do on an occasional basis. We're developing the channel. We're growing the subscription base, which is great. It's taking time.
It's really good.
But for us, it was a no-brainer in that I was already writing the content every week. I have a syndicated column in a number of newspapers. I had these deadlines, and I've got to research and produce the content anyway. So it's coming out and it's reaching a certain audience. But we thought, well, given the fact that those newspapers, in some cases, are not holding on too well. So as a medium,
online, everyone's got to go online now.
They push them online, which again, it gets good readership. But there's a different market out there that wants to have a visual. And I found that the fear that I had at the beginning about making it too visual and just going, people said you got to make it like 2 minutes. People won't watch 4.5 minutes. Mm-hmm. I'm of the opinion, no. If I'm interested in a subject, I can easily watch 10, 20, 15. I'll watch a whole hour if I want. But it's getting that sweet spot, if you will, that keeps the attention. And what we're realizing is that the length of the column, which is limited to 650, 700 words, is about exactly a 4 to 4.5 minute video. Once people realize that's what it is, and you're getting your point across, and it can be actually punchier, because if I put in quotes, Pierre Trudeau said this, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have the same impact as we took the actual clip of him saying it.
Oh,
so your brain is seeing him say it. It's not fake news. It's not, you haven't doctored this in any way. You didn't take it out of context. It's him at the press conference saying those words. Whereas when you put it into a column, you got to put the quotation marks and put the thing and say, he said, blah, blah, blah. You got to.
No, the video is nice. You put it up. It's proof of content while you're speaking over it.
And it reinforces. You're talking about a particular piece of equipment, putting the numbers up, flashing them up. If it's 19 billion or it's 9 billion, people can see automatically that's a lot of billions in between that we just spent for nothing. So it's like
73 billion to this, and
big numbers.
Yeah, big numbers. You've been doing this for a long time, so like it's 36
I'm an
years.
old guy.
Yeah, but that's why it's good. It's so people can.
But it's been an evolution. It hasn't been like people will actually say, okay, so you've done this. What's next for you? And I'm like, I don't even know how I got here.
It's pretty good stuff.
I started off, I wanted to be an artist.
Yeah.
And I had a tremendous interest in all things military. Read like crazy as a kid. I had huge collections of toy soldiers, and my dad was his game.
The G.I. Joes? You had the G.I. Joes?
A little bit, briefly, but it was more the military miniatures. It was like Napoleonic wargaming that my dad had. Yeah. The cannons actually fired, and he'd set up his system, and he was an artist. I mean, he would paint these things, but he was an incredible artist. I was following in his footsteps in many, many ways.
Yes.
Fantastic man, God rest in peace. But got into the College of Art, and I was engaged at the time to the woman I'm now still married to, and I could see my whole world closing. I was like, I hadn't gone out and seen the world yet. I was going to get a job in some studio in Toronto, and I was going to be an illustrator, and it was all happening. But it was like, I haven't lived yet. I haven't done anything. Yes. I'm a kid from the suburbs in Toronto, and I felt with all this reading of history that I wanted to test myself. Mm-hmm. Can I do it? So, I mean, it was 1982.
And you joined the
I
military.
walked into a recruiting center. I thought but like the movie Stripes, I'd be on a bus that
Yeah.
night and go, but it wasn't quite that quick. But no, I got in November 82. So I've been associated. So 42 years I've been associated with the Canadian military. And I loved it. I suddenly realized I could put a whole bunch of different things together that I enjoyed. And I had been a track and field athlete in high school. I'd competed internationally, but I had let that go when I discovered women and drinking. So I actually got back into it. So believe it or not, I was actually like the Army champion for a couple of years in a row.
Oh, you represented the Army in races.
I was the number one in the brigade, the 1,500, 5,000. I won a regimental achievement award. I mean, I was known to the guys in my regiment. I mean, it was an automatic 2 gold medals.
Really?
Yeah. So.
Oh, I don't even show up Scots here. I'm not racing.
That's 2 in the bank, and you're like, well, then there's no joy in winning because they just expect it, right? It'd only be serious depression if I lost, but no pressure.
Yeah.
So no, to get to compete, I competed at the nationals, the biathlon nationals in 1984. And we spent the whole winter it was like we were like professional athletes. We did nothing but train and ski and shoot, and then we competed. So that was an opportunity. I mean, you got to do it. I got to be a section commander as a private. I got to do that in Germany, and we were fully mechanized, the PPCLI.
Best years of your life.
It was. Yeah, and it was.
You were like,
it was
I'd choose a job that's not in the box.
Yeah, but it changes your whole mindset. I mean, it's the whole thing where they break you down, build you back up again. And then the Esprit de Corps was something which I had a sister, but never brothers. And suddenly I had 32 brothers. Like, I mean, you don't like all of them. You fight with some of them, but they're still, at the end of the day, they were your brothers.
You're forced to love your brothers. Yeah. They don't tell you.
But that was a sense that doesn't get really rarely mentioned. But no, so it was that career path. I mean, going to the Army, was a step out. And then coming out of the Army, it just happened to be that there was a new job created on the base as a graphic artist. My wife, who's an artist, she'd come out and she was doing artwork for the base and for the clients in Germany, and she also was a figure skater. So she was coaching figure skating while we were there. She actually had a higher status. She could have been an officer mess member, whereas I was enlisted. Once I got out, we became members of the officers mess. So we had all these different changes in our cultural status, etc. So, and when we did a lot of projects on the side, both her and I, as well as the artwork. And I got a job outside of the base graphic artist working for a Canadian who published
Germany.
a ski magazine. Yeah, he was a Canadian living in Germany. And he realized that the number of English-speaking soldiers, the Americans had a huge force there. There was the British Army was there, the Canadian Army was there. Well, he would put out these ski magazines and golf magazines. So it was like a tourism thing, which people could read. They could go on the bases and get these magazines, and he sold advertising all around. I was his art director.
Yeah.
And I'm doing all this stuff, and he was an ass to work for, but he was an interesting character, let's say.
Was he German?
No, Canadian, but his passport expired. He was definitely Canadian, but he was living like off the grid. He didn't pay tax to any country. He was like, his world was contra. He lived in hotels. He got restaurants to give him the food because they were taking ads and stuff. I mean, it was
He's like a bartering system or something.
Well, yeah, which as a publisher, I was seeing this firsthand. And he had discovered at the time that he could cut his costs by doing color separations in Bangkok, Thailand. We took all this lessons. We were printing in Germany and all this stuff. We put together some publications, my wife and I. We did our own where we sold the advertising. We did air show programs, and we did a regimental history for my regiment. It was their 75th anniversary. So we did posters and we did all this artwork. We used his sources like to go to Thailand to start our publishing world. So it was great, and we could promote our own artwork, our illustrations.
He's a real entrepreneur. The first entrepreneur you saw
he was a criminal.
He was a criminal. Yeah.
He went a little too far. He crossed the line.
He crossed some lines,
but he showed me the way. It was like, okay.
So you knew to take the good stuff.
And I realized, like, okay, although I'd been in biathlon, the military drove that love of skiing out of you because they just made it just a chore. Yeah. I didn't love skiing, and I didn't play golf. Yeah. But here I am doing these 2 magazines. I'm like, I love the military, and I love doing these histories, and the ability to do our artwork and to do the art aspect of it was what led us to come up with the idea for Esprit de Corps. And we got the idea.
It's a nice name. Esprit de Corps.
Because originally it was bilingual.
Yeah, so Esprit de Corps.
It was
Esprit de Corps.
The flight home, when we left Germany to come back to Canada, was on a Boeing 707. It was the Air Force they had 4 or 5 707s that they ran on regular routes, like a little mini airline for the military.
Yeah.
Well, in those days, there was no seatback entertainment. There was no nothing. There was no, on these planes, there was no magazine. But in those days, like an in-flight magazine was like that was all you got on a plane.
Yes.
We're talking 80.
For a long time.
88. Yeah. So it was before they had those. We didn't even have a movie screen in the middle. So you're flying, intercontinental flights for 8 hours.
8 hours just looking at the back of the
you're going to read the magazine. You've got a captive audience. The original versions, a lot of it highlighted the artwork that my wife and I did. They were quarterly. We only did 4 a year. It was aimed at the military. The passenger list was our distribution, so it was set.
Yep.
And anybody figured it out. Anybody who'd been in the military and then was now had a company that was trying to sell back to them realized that, 8 hours on that plane, I'm going to be reading this thing from cover to cover.
Yes, of course.
And it had crossword puzzles. We had, we tried fashion articles. We tried everything just to see what a normal in-flight would be. And we realized that people, by the time we did the 8th one, they wanted military stories. They wanted stories about themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And for me,
people love that.
You look at a 27-year-old guy, he's out of the Army, but now I can do Air Force stories. I can go to the Arctic. I can go on a submarine. I can do all this stuff to go out with the Navy.
And being independent, you're saying what you want to say.
Yeah, well, and truth be told, part of the deal was for the first while was that we were censored.
Oh.
We were producing it like zero cost to the military. We sold the advertising. We kept any revenue, whatever. But we, as part of the contract, delivered, I think the Air Force got 4 pages of information because they were producing safety brochures, whatever. So they got the safety brochure, got put in the mag.
Yep.
We did stuff about the squadrons that were flying this, and they got to vet the content. We submitted it to them, and they approved it, and it had to be bilingual.
Of course.
So our biggest expense and our biggest criticism for the first 2 years was always the quality of our French, and we were spending a ton of money on it.
It's back before AI and all that stuff. So
it was
hard.
We had a German printer that was doing the typesetting, so the German guy was laying out the French copy.
Yeah.
And I couldn't proofread it, so it was like we'd get mistakes. We probably had as many typos in English, but somehow it wasn't a cultural affront.
Yes.
But the French would go through and circle every mistake we made.
I speak French, and I would still hire somebody for our ads. We would still hire somebody who's proofreading French.
Yeah, so it was...
Yeah, but it's per word, right? They charge per word. So it's your expense goes up when you're a magazine.
And far more you'd pay for translating a word than you would for someone to write the word.
Yes.
So it was like, oh, okay. Anyhow, when it was at the juncture in 1990, the first Gulf War had started to escalate, and we had the crisis in Oka, where the troops were being deployed in Canada. So we were like, look,
where's that?
The Oka crisis? That's when the indigenous blocked the roads and there was a standoff.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, 1990.
1990, okay.
And the military, there's a famous photograph of the Mohawk War.
Yes, I was thinking that. I thought did it happen again after that?
No,
after 1990?
It was, but we deployed like a full brigade to break it down, and it was like, but it was a standoff that went on for weeks, captured the attention of the world, and we were looking at this going, look, if whatever we write now, it's in production for a month, and then it's going to be on the planes for 3 months. So it's like, we're not newsworthy. We're not, we want to do more. And the military informed us they were getting out of the airline business. So you're going to have to go on your own. So we had to make that decision. Big decision. Do we go newsstand and go monthly, or do we just close up shop? Mm-hmm. We were doing well. We said, okay, let's hire some people. How much do we need to do this? And we were taking in other publications, color separations to go to Thailand, because that was a regular thing. In those early years, I personally have 36 trips to Thailand. My wife, I think she has 9, 2 of them with me, the rest of them on her own. Yeah. Our office manager has, 8. Someone was going every month.
Yeah.
And then we would take other publications' work with us because we could save them on the color separations. So we were brokering that. It was a big part of our business model, which allowed us to become this
That's smart.
monthly magazine. Well, and it was also a short life expectancy.
Technology, you could just email
technology caught up to it
Yeah.
by 94. 94, we stopped doing that because it was now you could flick a button on a computer and do all that was being done by hand.
Yeah, it's
but the
crazy
cost,
what you saw before. Like the technology changed your whole business.
To work in Thailand and to work in Germany, like as a young guy, this was
27.
Like,
you're just
now I'm 28, 29, but I'm still below 30, and we're doing all this. And the first Gulf War was happening. I got to go there. I was in Qatar and Bahrain before the war started. I went back. I went to
Kuwait. You said
Kuwait.
Bahrain there. You said Bahrain like.
Arabi, شوي عربي. أنا صحفي كندي.
تحكي عربي كمان.
Arabic, yeah.
That's good.
I learned fast.
I like when you said Bahrain. I'm like, that's pretty impressive.
It's hard to get the sound there. Sahafi.
Yeah.
Kanadi.
That's nice.
So yeah, but for me, so it was to get in there and see that and become like this. And all of a sudden, I'm writing for other people besides just my magazine.
Yeah.
Because I was never. So I didn't take journalism, right? So it was one of those things where. Once we got these opportunities, and they'd say, okay, you can go on this exercise, or you can go here, you can go to Cyprus, or you can go to some place with a tour. I'm like, well, why would I send somebody? Mm-hmm. Go to Norway, and we did all these things with these training exercises, go at sea, go on a submarine, and I'm writing them, but I'm writing them for my own magazine. But I always had this like, of course I'm going to publish my stuff.
Of course.
But you don't get that feedback as to someone says this is crap. Like,
You don't know yet.
so you didn't know. So eventually, and around 92, I was going to go to Cambodia and places that other journalists just weren't going, but it was still interesting to the Canadian forces to be abroad. And I tried my luck. I went to this Ottawa Citizen or the Ottawa Sun and said, would you be interested in a story? Blah,
They were
blah, blah.
competitors back then.
Yeah, and I started selling stories, and it was like, they're all like, hey, this is great stuff, keep it coming. I'm like, well, what, maybe I am a journalist, we'll see, right? So it's developed. I mean, I've written for Reader's Digest, I've written for Soldier of Fortune, I've written for the Indian Defense Review, like I've written 8 books. I mean, I became, as I said, I never knew what the plan was, but when the guy finally in around 95 published,
Because the Cold War started, then you had to go to Qatar, Bahrain, Cyprus. So 92, then by 90, so 3 years later. So you traveled a lot. You're on planes like every month.
And millions of air miles.
Yeah.
I was running at my travel agent called me Mr. Elite because all of it in the back of the bus.
Yeah, of course.
All of it economy class because it was all on my ticket. So it was like, I mean, a lot of wear and tear. And I covered the war in Kosovo, in the Balkans, in Croatia. Where else did I go?
You've seen a lot.
So that was the thing too. Was the first Gulf War, with the bombing of Kuwait and the Death Highway. I was on Death Highway with the Canadian engineers. Like I followed
the bombing of Kuwait. That was the Iraq-Kuwait.
91, the Iraq-Kuwait War.
Oh yeah, that's the one. The reason why I know that one very well is because the movie with Three Kings.
Yes, exactly that era. Exactly that era.
That was a good movie.
Oh, and the Americans spray painted graffiti on the pyramids in Iraq. I mean, when they entered, they did things that you don't want to know. I mean, it was crazy. I got into Kuwait on the Death Highway, and you saw just what a massacre it had been, right? And you knew as a professional soldier, like you thought it was going to be a different. There's only about 300 Americans killed, and half of that was friendly fire. Like it was a bloodbath. I mean, 200,000 Iraqi casualties. It was
like a 1 week.
They bombed and bombed, and then they went in and they just rolled through. It was like 48 hours before they surrendered.
48 hours, something. It was like a short period of time.
The ground war, and then the word was given, and they all started to pull back. And as they were pulling back in Kuwait, there was minefields, and then the Air Force just came and they pummeled. You just pictures of it. I mean, it's all these destroyed vehicles, buses, tanks, cars, and you realize just by the sheer number, like how many people died in that spot. So when we went in there and we climbed up on these things in the Canadian soldiers, most of the bodies were gone by then, and they climbed on them. And only years later, with that combat engineer regiment, they realized that during that period they'd been exposed to massive amounts of depleted uranium. Americans had used depleted uranium rounds on those tanks, which I was exposed to. They were exposed to it. And it turned out...
It's a chemical that stays a long time,
so right? it's depleted uranium. It's nuclear waste. Waste. But it's got a dense...
For like people at home who don't understand what that is.
So higher density than tungsten, which is a very expensive and very rare mineral, which has a tremendous armor-piercing capability. But this thing, what they found out by launching this nuclear waste was that it would penetrate better than tungsten, and then it would ignite the minute it goes through. Incinerate the crew. What they didn't mention was it's got like a shelf life of, whatever the radiation is, a shelf life of 500 years. No, 500.
Oh, wow.
That was what...
So that area is still not habitable.
They towed all the stuff away, and there was a tremendous number of birth defects in southern Iraq, which because the sanctions remained in place, if you recall. I covered the bombing of Serbia in 99. I went into Belgrade.
Oh, Serbia was a bad one too, right? That's what...
But it was NATO. Canada was involved. Canada was leading the charge on the bombing, but I took that opportunity, and even though it's Esprit de Corps, a Canadian military magazine, I got a visa from the very understanding Yugoslav embassy to put me on the ground. They wanted people to see what was happening to them and be non-judgmental, because I covered the war in Croatia, covered the war in Bosnia, and a lot of what the Canadian soldiers had seen was that the abuses and the human rights violations were being done to the Serbs. All we heard were the ones that they were doing to the other people, but where our guys were, they were actually protecting them. So the stories that I did, the first-hand stories, began to get the attention.
Sides.
Well, but it got the attention of the Serbs. They said, this guy's not giving us, he's giving us a fair shake. Like, he's showing that we're victims too. So they would show up on my book launches, and I was like, well, where are they coming from, right? But it came to their attention. So when I wanted to get a visa, and there was a lineup of people that wanted to go in, they had to be very screening. Of course, I'm ex-military, and it's like, was this guy really an operative? So
because you come with that card, ex-military.
Much younger guy at the time. I was only 38, I guess, at that point. And
full grown, but still very young.
Fit. But I mean, so you come in there and you got you're looking like a soldier. You were a soldier. You're from a NATO country, so these border guards are looking at you, right? So the clincher was when they would read my name in my passport. Well, Scott spelled S-K-O-T, but Scott in Serbian means either like a jerk or an asshole.
Oh yeah, like so Scott's coming.
If I said TC Scott, I mean, you would be like, we're fighting. Like, this,
Really?
You're an asshole or something. So they would say there's no way that the guy would be codenamed asshole. So it's got to be legit. So off he goes.
That's too bad it wasn't like clever.
Yeah, that's like take me off. Look at his name. There's no way he's a spy. It's like, okay,
he wouldn't call himself an ass.
His name is asshole. Yeah.
That's good.
I know. So it's one of those things where to this day there are older Serbian individuals we know because we know the community. I've done book launches in Sweden for Serbs. I've done them all over the place.
Yes. So they were very happy. You gave them a fair shake on theirs.
Well, and my diary record it wasn't trying to be what the war was all about. It was
you were on the ground saying, "Look, this
is what happened here. This is what happened to the Serbs." I went to a funeral of a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old that NATO bombers had killed, and that was a bit tense. Because I'm from a NATO country, it'd be like somebody wearing Fiat to 9/11 the day after. Like it was, people might not take that. My driver at the time said, we got to be
quick
on the lookout here. One guy came over and he said, "Look, thanks for coming out. People need to see what they've done." And seeing the females like just wailing. I mean, just when they're putting the little coffins in the ground and stuff. And at the time, my son,
it's hard to see little coffins.
My son was
big coffins
at the time.
Easier, yeah.
And you just realize like this: if it's a soldier's coffin, it's one thing, but when it's a kid's coffin, right? And it was done. They think that it was whatever pilot it was that just jettisoned his bombs. Like there wasn't a target nearby. Anyway, that was an interesting period to cover that. And then
that's hard. That's hard on everybody. There's no winners in any situations that happen. Canada or whatever NATO guys. Because you go back home, you're...
And to try to humanize it, like one of the stories I did was, I went back in afterwards several times. I probably got, I don't know, maybe in total to the Balkans from the Croatia-Bosnia war when the Canadian soldiers were there, and then covering it. Ja vrlo malo govorim srpski. I speak a little bit of the language. I picked it up for a while. It's enough to know what my name means. But anyway, you got to know them. Yeah. And you were humanizing them. And one of the stories I did was I said, look, I want to do one of the mothers whose son was killed. I want to talk to her. And they're like, well, why? I said, because that story is going to resonate to anybody in my readership. Everybody knows that dreaded knock on the door.
Yes, better than the guy at the corner store.
3 guys in uniform, you know instantly your son's been killed, right? They found one, and we did the story, and it was emotional. It was emotional for me to be there. She hugged me because her son was gone, and she was a widow, so she'd been left on her own. And
she lost her husband and her son.
He was already gone. Yeah, they passed, but the son was gone from the war. But she...
Is her last kid?
Yeah, only kid. She was alone. And again, so the people that were there, the Serbian, the time there was Yugoslavia still, they were like, look, why is this one guy? We lost 1,200. Like, what just put the numbers out. And I said, well, no, that goes at the end.
Yeah.
He said that. He said, this is what happened. And this story played out 1,200 times, so you just get an idea. Yeah. And you realize, oh, yeah, that's right. Everybody's individual. And again, we've had our Canadian soldiers who were deployed to Afghanistan. I mean, we know it's a tiny tribe. Our readership is a tiny tribe. I mean, it's there are 6,000 military couples, which means 12,000 of the 60,000 people in the forces are married to another member of the forces, 1 in 5.
Yes.
And then of that, 40% of people who join have one or both parents in the military. So when something happens to them, it isn't Canada. It's a little town of 60,000 that's getting hit. Yes. Over and over again, whether they're wounded or whether they're killed. And those emotions, and people when they would go back second, third tours, you've got the wives and the families that are now worried for those 6 months
while they're in Afghanistan.
That knock on the door, or they hear on the news or they would know instantly because there would be a blackout. It was the same for the Americans. There'd be a news blackout. So suddenly there's a blackout, and until they can inform, so there's no speculation and whatever, but.
To keep it contained, blackout, then they have to do their investigation internally.
They would inform the families and then make it public. But all the families knew. So for those brief hours, everyone knows, everyone's waiting for the knock on the door, right?
Oh, wow.
And I've talked to guys who had that job of going to the family. I mean, that's the other job, is they got to go and knock on the door.
And get the bad news.
Yeah. And then they collapse in the driveway, or they...
Is there a training to give that information? Because the bedside matters.
Yeah, they usually bring the padre. That was how it worked, the chaplain. And they were there. So we'd have a chaplain and then an officer from the chain of command would show up. But, I mean, it didn't matter. People, when they see the car drive up...
They knew.
They would drop their groceries or whatever. The enormity of what's about to happen is like, well, this isn't going to be good, right? So,
I remember a buddy of mine's like a very good friend of mine now. He was in Afghanistan, and he was sort of on a farm. I guess him and his group, let's say a group of 10 guys, were on a farm, and that was just their area. They had to keep that place safe. That's where they ate, drank their food, or ate and drank water and whatever. That's where they hang out. And they would get helicoptered in, whoever. If there was a sniper near in the area, they would get a special forces or a sniper helicopter to counter that, whatever it was. This picture, because there's pictures of each other. He said this picture was it's like this room was bombed like maybe a week or two after, and we lost like 2 guys because they were just in that room. He's like, the crazy thing is that I was just on the roof hanging out, like prone or whatever. He's like, I go in that room all. It's like you're 1 week away or one step away from you could have been. He would tell me, he's like, sometimes we'd have like really rough, I guess they would hear, they were really worried when they heard Russian over the radio. I guess that's when, like, they knew like, oh, there could be like, because they're speaking to each other, they heard that, and they would fly in like counter snipers, or they would hear whatever it was. Because I guess in Afghanistan, they would have their own, like, it was just chess, right? So they would have, they would put their bishop forward, and you have to like bring in your bishop or whatever it was. And he said one of the hardest times was, I guess they would, oh, this is a different friend who told me the story. They would shoot off little cannons towards them, or little like rockets.
Right, towards the Canadians.
Towards the Canadians.
Yeah.
And then the sucky part would be, they sometimes would get hurt from it, or kids would get hurt from it. Like they would just tell, and then they would bring their kids over to your hospital, to your doctors to repair it. You would, give them health care, or you would take care of them. But how the little boy got hurt was he was trying to get rockets thrown at you. Like, so it's a very weird thing. And he would say,
but that's, it's
just part of
the premise of the war it wasn't a war. We were occupiers.
Yeah, of course.
From the get-go. By the time we got there, the Americans had done the fighting, and we were in there. It was just a matter of where we deployed, and the enemy was the people.
Yep.
And that didn't change. And then when it finally ended back in 2021, when the Americans collapsed, it's over. Like we lost the war, but we started off and we supported an occupation, and that's something which is why there's so much PTSD for the guys, because it's for us. They knew. Yeah, but we've always been the good guys. We've always been the liberators. We go to Holland, and our guys, we defeat the Germans. We go through the streets. The people salute us. Korea, they still remember the sacrifices that kept the North and the South a democracy. So this is something which...
So Afghanistan changed being the good guy to, hey, wait, you've been here too long.
And we lost.
So
then it's like, how do we justify what the loss was for? They never wanted us there. We put in Hamid Karzai, and we just appointed these guys, and then we just called it a democracy. It was no democracy. They didn't understand what that even meant.
This didn't work there.
We picked the guy we wanted. We manipulated him. There's a scene in War Machine with Brad Pitt, where he's playing the General McChrystal character, and he goes in and he wants permission from the Hamid Karzai character to launch the offensive. And he goes in and he wakes him up, and Karzai's like, why did you do that? Like, he goes, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
He's like, we're just going through the motions here. You don't really need my permission, and I can't really give you permission. Why did you wake me up, right? And it just brings it home. And, of course, that movie was brilliant. But people still want it to mean something. They still say, oh, but by the time we left, or we got out before the victory parade, now we realize there is no victory parade.
It was always called Peace Mission. Every time I heard it, because I've been working with D&D for a while, it would always be called Peace Mission. We call it war now, but I know it's like
the International Security Assistance Force. Well, there was no security. What are you assisting? And it was like, again, that we were doing.
We bring beach balls and pens. I guess
we trained the locals and paid the locals, but that didn't mean that they were ever liked us. I mean, it was this notion within, if not hours, then days after the Taliban took over, they were flying these Black Hawk helicopters in their little parades that they had. You don't learn to fly a Black Hawk helicopter. Like the guys who had been trained by the Americans stayed back, now they just rolled over. It's like their true colors came out, and they're prepared to accept this. And that was where people thought that the warlords...
That's true. To fly those machines,
you can't.
It's like years of training.
Yeah.
And hours,
we took the time to train the guys who now are flying for the Taliban, and all the Hummers.
And probably fixing them too. Probably the mechanics are still there,
or they sold them off. I mean, a lot of that stuff got sold to Iran because the Taliban,
the neighboring country, they touch, right?
Yeah, but we had established an ISAF. It was like 330,000 strong. Like in the
330,000.
Their population is less than that of Canada, but they had a standing force. The Afghan army and police was 330,000 strong. So that's 330,000 assault rifles, all this equipment, all these Hummers that they had.
Well, so everyone has assault rifles.
Well, they're everywhere. But and they're American made. But these guys, to the Taliban, at the height of their control, before the invasion, they had about 40,000 fighters tops. So they can't maintain an army that big. They can't payroll that. They were selling stuff to Iran that they'd captured because it's like
we got to pay for bills.
And also now it's their job to do security. They don't want any other disgruntled person having access to this flood of
I didn't know that Iran and Afghanistan were allies.
They're not. They're trading.
Yeah, I thought they were.
If you want money,
money. Yeah, everyone's an ally. When
people
it comes to
fled from Afghanistan into Iran. I mean, they've got a huge number of refugees, which they at any point, I think it's like 3 million. They could have at any point pushed them back in. Once the Americans had said the Taliban's done and we're in charge now, they could have said, okay, good. Then if it's safe and secure, then here they come back, right? Yeah. But they didn't. I mean, we want to blame Iran for everything, but they could have done worse. They could have done more. If you put 3 million unemployed people back on the other side, and now you got to feed them,
that will hurt your infrastructure for sure.
And they could have legally said they're only here temporarily. Yep. You now say that it's a utopia because the Taliban's gone. They're coming back. How fast can you take them? And then just start sending them in. And that would have destroyed.
What's the population of Taliban in the country?
The percentage?
The percentage.
I mean, again, it's a fractured. Like we plan to go back. I mean,
is Taliban like a party? Like, let's say, I know this sounds weird, but it's like, is it like
it's a movement,
liberal and conservative? Is like Taliban is a party in the government? Is that how it works?
So they are fundamentalists, and that's where it was a religious movement, which was born out of the fact that the warlords who had defeated the communists all started fighting amongst themselves and preying upon their people. So you got this whole division between the Tajiks and the Uzbeks, and you got the Pashtuns are divided by tribes, and then it's like, are they secular? Yeah, very few secular. I mean, and of course you've got the Shiite Hazaras. Yeah, everybody beats them up. I mean, it's just one of those things.
They're the minority.
They're a minority, and every time somebody else takes over, for the first few weeks they kick the crap out of the Hazaras. But the Hazaras, we've interviewed their warlord, and
because he's a Shia representative.
He is, yeah. But they're a different. I mean, they're different.
Because Iran is a Shia country, so he's probably
they support them.
So they get their backing from them.
They do. Yeah. But they're also the guy we interviewed the warlord, and it was an interesting session because you read up on these guys, right? And his specialty was disemboweling the pregnant women of his enemies.
Oh wow, that's what he aims for.
That was his thing. Yeah. Right. Whereas Dostum was to drive over the prisoners in a tank or an armored vehicle.
So they all had their final move, like
you have to have your little your calling card, man. Yeah, do whatever they do.
There's a movie that had that, and it's probably in Afghanistan or Iraq. There's a guy, I forgot which movie. I think it's the same movie. There were three kings. He would come out with a drill. They would the movie Sniper.
Sniper.
You ever watch the movie Sniper?
No. American Sniper?
American Sniper? I think the bad guy in the movie, the final boss, he was known to take a drill and drill into people. So I guess they all have like a calling card or like a...
Torture is it's a science in those places. I mean, that's something which
I don't recommend people to go out and see it right away, like the part. But he was doing it to a little boy to get his dad out, like he was looking for the kid's dad.
Yeah. Oh,
and he was like
how their security apparatus would work, and it was a CBC journalist that was taken hostage, and then it turned out it was an inside job. It was her driver had set her, fixer had set her up. So they went, and the intelligence service took his family. And they started to barter. We've got your family in our prison. We want her back. Like the idea that you would go and just take someone's family.
So they went,
and we were in.
So the NATO countries,
Afghan security.
The Afghan security.
One's working for Karzai at the time.
Okay, so
they went and just took them and.
We're like, we got to get this. We got to get this guy. Oh, I can get him. And then okay, I know his aunt lives here, and they would go and take the whole family.
Round up his family,
and say, "We come with
us."
And
believe me, I mean, people they know what an Afghan prison looks like. We got inside 3 times.
Afghan prison.
Yeah, we were given great access. I mean, Afghanistan, we have 7 trips total. We did 2 different documentary films, both called Outside the Wire. One was called Outside the Wire Endgame. So, we did a lot. And we dressed like the locals. We grew the beards and the hair before we went in for weeks.
He's pointing at me.
The beards and the hair, man.
I could fit anywhere in the world.
I have never washed my Afghan garb. We've got 7 trips in. They averaged about 2 to 3 weeks.
Yep.
And still we'd be the cleanest guys on the street.
Really?
It's like, my wife is, as soon as I get home, she's like, I got to wash that. It stinks. And
I need it like that.
I need it when I go back. I got to keep it on.
Oh, they can tell by your shoes. They can tell by the way you walk.
You can diminish the risk. Like you're not walking around with a Yale sweaty hoodie on and a ball cap. I mean,
Yale.
It's like at a distance.
New York.
If you're walking, but just our build is different. I mean, they're very slender and they're very. I mean, so we're walking around with Burger King fueled bodies.
Oh, they're slim because they don't have fast food or they don't have processed food.
You could have only those guys are the bigger size, right? So we were somewhere in between, but it was just your gait and your North American. But you can mitigate it, but you don't eliminate it, right? And if you're in a car moving quickly through traffic, like sometimes the odd person will just look and realize that you're a Horji, you're a foreigner.
Yeah, Horji is a slang for foreigner.
It's a very nasty word.
Okay, yeah.
It's their version of the N word, but when you hear it and you realize that you're in the proximity, you're
like,
the
wait,
orgy,
someone
blah 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 orgy. It's like that's me.
That's me.
I'm tuning in now.
you call someone else orgies.
I mean, we would go to places and they had spots where orgies could get alcoholic beverages, and we would go off and again sometimes normally we would. Especially at nighttime, we wouldn't talk. We'd just walk back to our guest house in the streets, and as long as you didn't bump into anybody, you didn't have to say anything. You just kept your eyes, as you would. But then we'd come out.
This is the downtown. This is
in Kabul, man.
Kabul, yeah.
So sometimes you'd be out there, and you'd realize that we'd been speaking as we were going. And you go past a group of people, and then now they're following us. It's like, okay,
like,
you get sober pretty quick.
Kandahar is near there, or is that Kandahar?
It was where the big base was. That's where our guys were. We went down there.
Is it like every area has a different team?
City?
Different
the
city.
Pashtuns in the south as opposed to Kabul is a mixture.
Yeah.
But no, we did the outside the wire thing there, and
Kandahar
is actually it's a mispronunciation. It was founded by Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be Alexander.
Yeah.
But it's over the years it's become Kandahar.
Well, in Arabic, Alexander's Eskandar.
Eskandar.
And Kandahar is how.
Kandahar is how it
So if you see someone's name Eskandar,
he's Alexander.
That's Alexander. And then Alexandria in Egypt. Alexander was
every
everywhere.
city
has a he just left a big city anywhere he went. So Kandahar.
But he actually, he was the original. He went through Afghanistan.
He wrote about the Afghan people being the most beautiful people or something.
But there's people in the north that still have the blue eyes, and there's still some descendants of Alexander the Great. But it was his supply lines that they attacked. I mean, that's what did it, because he got all the way into India.
Yes.
But then they got stopped because these guys, anybody can get into Afghanistan. Very few ever walk out.
Oh, yeah, because it's mountainy, right? So it's like you can only go through certain areas.
Hindu Kush?
Yeah.
It means the Hindu killer. Those mountains, the Hindu Kush mountains. Kush means
killer.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So those mountains kill the Indians.
I always thought Kush means like marijuana.
No, Hindu Kush mountains.
Or whatever that drug was. That's what I thought it meant. But whatever, it means kill. So the Hindu Kush means killed people.
It kills the Indians. These mountains kill the Indians.
Because he never conquered India, right? Alexander?
He got into India.
But
it was his supply lines through Afghanistan that was the problem.
He went too far.
They attacked him. I mean, it's where he was weak. Yeah.
So Afghanistan.
So they're not going to stand up to you. No. They didn't really stand up to the Americans. The Taliban disappeared, and then they were in hiding, etc. But they just kept on waiting them out, and they finally took over.
So Afghanistan. So Alexander couldn't keep up with the Afghanis. The communists couldn't keep up with the
Russians couldn't. The British had four times they went in there.
They couldn't keep up with them.
And I think that was a little sore part for the British military. They always want to go back in because they've got unfinished business. It was one of their most total defeats. Was the first invasion when they went into the retreat from Kabul. So
the only person ever take over was the Mongol.
One guy got out.
Mongolian. Genghis Khan was the only guy who got there.
And he took over everything. But the British, that one retreat from Kabul, they got wiped out. And one guy got out, and he was dressed like a woman to escape. I mean, it's the most total defeat in British military history. So it's like, they've glorified that with a few paintings and stuff, but it wasn't very glorious.
It was bad.
So, it was bad.
Isn't the Taliban created to counter the Communist Party?
The Taliban?
I thought Taliban was created by the Americans, with the NATO countries to counter the Mujahideen. Oh, that's the one.
They were the ones that was the different warlords that they supported. That were to fight and keep fighting for their culture and their religious freedoms, etc., to fight the communists who wanted to bring equality and jobs and literacy, and like all the things which we said we wanted to do too, is what the communists said they were going to do. But the Americans said, no, these people need to keep their religious freedoms. They need to keep their identity. They need to keep whatever.
Their culture. They want to keep their way the way it is.
So and it was, Islamic fundamentalism was basically the women were kept in burqas and all. Yeah. That was good for us then because they're not communists.
Yeah.
So that was the big plan.
That's the big scary one, is the communist part.
But once the communists pulled out, and it was Najibullah was in Kabul, he held on for almost 3 years before they toppled him. Before they got in, he held on against the warlords. And it was General Dostum who turned on him, and then they broke the siege. And he still lived they let him live in a guest house until the Taliban took over in 96. And then they hung him and his brother from the roadside stuff. But it was that after
because period. He worked, why did they hang him? Because he worked.
He'd been the communist leader.
Okay, he was a communist leader.
But he was defeated. His communists held on. The Soviet Union collapsed, but he was still holding on
to the capital. He was still
he was besieged in the capital, but he held on, which is what the Americans thought they could do this time. They thought that Ashraf Ghani's troops, with the 400,000, 300,000, whatever it was that the Americans had trained and equipped,
They would keep the
would
town.
hold on for at least a couple of years.
For the capital.
They didn't hold on for a couple of weeks. They didn't hold on for a couple of days. He fled. They handed over their weapons. Like, if the Americans are going, we're out of here. But they didn't expect that, because history had shown that, even Najibullah, the communist, who was cut off from the Soviet Union, was able to hold out for 2 or 3 years before he was able to surrender. It just didn't work out that way. But they learned their lesson too.
That's too bad, because that country has a lot of resources. It's a great location.
They have resources, but to develop them would cost you bigger resources.
So it's not
There's
worth
no trains. Like, the ideal hope was to get the pipeline down through Kandahar into the Turkmenistan, Tajikistan.
Because they border so many
They've
countries.
got so much natural gas and oil in those countries, but they're on the Soviet system. So they shipped their stuff in the past.
Going
But us
north.
getting that pipeline down there was a big part of the deal. They needed to get the Taliban. The Taliban were negotiating with that. They were going to reduce the opium sales. They were already doing that before 9/11. And then once it happened, they thought they'd put Karzai in. He was from one of the U.S. oil companies, Karzai.
Yeah.
So it's like, you guys are doing.
Oh, yeah, like the whole
you're not
Taliban.
pretending here. Like,
Yeah.
what is this all about? It was not that they had oil, but it was to put the pipeline through it. And geographically, the only place you can do it is through Kandahar. So that never happened. It's a lose-lose. But if you did have lithium or any kind of, rare metals, et cetera, in Afghanistan,
They take it.
no, but the cost to get it out.
Too much.
To go in to develop it, you'd have to put in everything. Like, the Brits were never there building railway systems and stuff. It is.
Bare.
You could film movies about the Bible and not have to worry about stuff in the cell towers in the background. It is like
Desert.
Which for us, I mean, it was a magical place. It was frightening as hell, but it's also.
That's true.
To see it, it was just it's like untouched. You know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Out of all the places you've ever been, like, let's consider that the Middle East. Out of all the places you've been in the Middle East, what was your favorite stops? Because you said Cyprus. That's kind of Middle East / Mediterranean.
Yeah.
That must have been a good stop, Cyprus.
But it was more recent when I was there. It wasn't during the fighting.
Back in those times, yeah.
Yeah, but now it's beautiful. Now I was in the northern part, which is, I think there's 400,000 people there. But
because Canada was in Cyprus for many years, just between the line between Turkey and Greece, right?
It was our longest running deployment, and then finally we still have a handful of people there, but then not a contingent.
Yeah.
But all our guys, that was a big thing. You'd rotate through for 6 months. And
a lot of people don't notice, but like Cyprus is like 50% is governed by Turkey, and the other 50% is Greece, right? Is that still the case?
Northern Cyprus is not recognized by anybody but Turkey as an independent state.
Yeah.
But I've met the president of Northern Cyprus for their national day. I've met him. He's got fewer people than the mayor of Halifax, but I've met him. But they have like 40,000 Turkish troops. They have a huge population of foreign students. They have universities there, and they teach you in English, which is an interesting.
In Turkey,
in the Turkish Cypriot portion, yeah.
So they're going to graduate from a university to Turkey.
They bring them in from the Middle East. They bring them in from Africa, but they teach them in English, the professors, and then they get I don't know what the equivalency is, but it makes them a lot of money. And for the foreign students, the climate is amazing. It's beaches everywhere.
Oh yeah, I was going to say it must be a great spot to go to school.
If you like kebab,
everyone has a kebab shop. Shawarma, yeah. Everyone claims the shawarma is like their stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know who started it.
But it's the all reaching of the former Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
Everybody's got baklava in the Balkans. They've got some version of
the baklava,
dolma or salma, whatever they call it. Everybody claims it.
Supposedly the baklava, this is funny to say, I saw this. So the baklava, we call it betlewa because K's are silent, like, Habib, Khabib, So baklava or betlewa, it's called baklava. So it started supposedly in Ukraine, or I don't know. Where's the big problem that Russia has in Ukraine? What's that little like island spot?
Crimea.
I think it started there. So
which was part of the Ottoman Empire. That was
part of the empire. But I think Greece was there too at one point, or I guess the expansion of Rome, I guess, went there. What it is that the locals called people with balaclavas. So when the British came, they wore balaclavas, and they would just cover up. So balaclavas, and then they transfer to the pastry being over the cover up, so they call it balaclava. So the balaclava came from the British came in with the.
But the balaclava,
it goes up to here, right?
It's named after there was a battle in the Crimean War.
Or is it the Crimean War or something, right?
So it was the balaclava was the Battle of Balaclava. But that's when whether they started wearing the headgear. Well, they invented it then. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
was the British known to bring this? Were they there?
That's who called it that.
Okay, so they came
after following the Battle of Balaclava, the local town of Balaclava. That's when whether it was local and they adopted it, or whether they started to improvise because they were freezing. I don't know.
I don't know what it was, but that supposedly, I don't know where I saw it, but someone said that word baklavas came from balaclavas. The balaclava came first,
right?
And then the
balaclava.
baklava.
And the balaclava headgear was named after something in the Crimea.
Yeah, Crimea.
Which solved the mystery.
Okay. We solved the mystery. So supposedly this pastry comes from that area.
Okay.
Because they called it that. It was like like layering up, because you layer it up for winter, I guess, and they layered that, and they came up with that pastry. Everyone kind of has their own recipe. So like
anywhere that the Ottoman Empire touched on, whatever delicacies they had, everybody else seems to have them.
Yeah.
But then they all say this is theirs. It's like, it's.
But then the Greeks will say, "Well, I was there first." So because the Greek will say the Ottoman Empire took over to the Greek country, and they had it. It was sort of like they came in like, "What do we eat here?" Well, they've been eating it. It's pretty good. So they just.
Oh, of course, you adopt the best of everybody else's. Oh, this is great.
Because going back to Alexander, the Roman Empire, everyone spoke Greek in the area. Everyone probably ate Greek food.
Would have been the lingua franca. I'd rely upon that to trade.
The Roman Empire spoke Greek, and they had that, and then.
But even the idea of cooking shawarma, cooking it from
a spit.
But heated from the sides as opposed to from
the bottom,
just with the fat that comes down through it.
Yeah,
but I mean that's
a genius idea.
Easy to do now when you've got electricity, you can put it around the side of it, but not easy to do when you're talking about the.
That's true.
I mean, it's.
But that was like the street food, and then I think they even had that type of street food in Spain and Portugal, like the pita sandwich.
I think anything on the Mediterranean, Spain. I mean, all those guys sailed back and forth, the piracy and all this trading and whatever would have.
I think the Arabs from North Africa occupied Spain and Portugal for like 700 years.
The Moors, yeah.
And the people who were there fought back, like the conquistadors. They fought back and pushed everyone away. And those guys were used to having the sandwich or whatever. And they brought it to like Mexico, and they brought the taco or whatever. They brought we need something like we eat out of our hands. And they brought this whole idea. And then I guess that's the real winner right now.
Yeah, I think it's the only thing that's universal is that every single culture has something that's a form on a beer.
Yeah. Everyone has the beer.
Different hard liquors, but I think everybody figured out how to make beer.
Everyone knows how to make beer and wine. Every culture has their own.
Some don't have grapes, though, so it's not always.
But they invented something. So, like, Japanese has sake, which is a wine through rice.
Wine, yeah. Well, you can ferment anything. Yeah.
You can ferment anything that you have too much of. You can ferment, I guess. Too much food. They do like potatoes. Does vodka.
Oh yeah, I've had that Kartoffelschnaps in Germany. Yeah, it's terrible.
I was gonna say back to so what was your favorite stop? I guess what's a good memory?
I mean,
because you've been a lot of places.
Yeah, but what I realize about the human experience is that people are in love with where they are. People love their homeland, right? Yeah. So I mean, I would go back to Iraq on one of my trips, and then before the invasion. But
Iraq
it was
before the invasion was different.
I was there in 2000.
Right?
It was the sanctions were hard. It was whatever. And again, it's like a dust bowl, but we crossed the border from Jordan into Iraq, and this guy, he gets down and he's kissing the sand because he's home, right? And I'm like, we're in the same dust bowl. Like, what are you seeing here that I'm not seeing, right? But to him, it was huge, and
because he got to Jordan,
as soon as he was back on his home soil, he's
in tears.
Happy. Yeah, he was like his heart exploded or whatever. Yeah. But it was one of the guys.
Because he's Jordanian that was stuck in Iraq.
No, he was a Canadian coming with me that was going back to Iraq. He lived here. We couldn't fly in. We had to take a car across during the sanctions. There was no fly zone.
Oh, so you had to fly into Jordan
and take this 12-hour drive to Baghdad.
To Baghdad. Oh, wow! And that was during this.
Every one of those drivers knew that if you're going in, you had to have all your money on you because there was no credit.
Oh, there's no banking.
No, you had to have cash. So that driver, who you've never met before, no one knows you're there. This is before cell phones and you can't tell anybody you're there. What's the guy's plate number? Like none of that. So you're taking this jump of faith to get in a car.
I like the story.
And the guy keeps telling me the first time I did it, he keeps telling me, just Mister, like just go to sleep. Just go to sleep. I'm like, that'll be my last sleep.
No, like take a sleep in the back of the car.
Just fall asleep and
open the window, crack open
the seat back, and go to sleep. Go ahead. It's like, yeah, right. No, you know that all my money is either on me or in my. Like,
you take a wrong turn. You're with your boys.
You're in the desert. You don't see even another car for like 4 hours. Like there's nothing there.
And he knows where he's going. The guy, high beams, I guess.
Yeah. And they would race across. That was part of the thing. These guys, there was
so the Canadian Iraqi. So he's a Canadian Iraqi.
We got to the border point, and then
he kissed. He got out.
As soon as he gets across through the thing, he's like kissing the ground, and I'm like, "What are you seeing here?"
He's kissing the ground.
The Iraqi side. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
He's finally home. Yeah. But we had one of the guys from Kandahar.
Yeah.
And he was a big guy, and he was one of our escorts. So he was driving us around. He worked for one of the aid agencies that was helping us out. So we're driving around, and he was testing his English, and he says, I knew why the whole world came here. And we're like, well, please
Afghanistan.
Please, to Kandahar, of all places.
Yeah.
And he goes, it's because Kandahar is so lush. I'm looking out the window, I'm seeing like a dirt hole with riverbeds running dry.
Yeah, I want to leave here as soon as possible,
But compared to the desert surrounding it,
I guess so.
it has some greenery. It's like if this guy ever sees a picture of Northern Ontario, he's going to realize, like, what are you nuts?
Deers.
This is not
water.
lush. This is like
Northern Ontario is
but he's
beautiful.
never seen anything other than the surrounding area and this part. So he thinks the whole world came and built this giant airfield and 20,000 people sitting here because of their riches. It's like, if you have any idea how much they're spending every day to keep those guys with air conditioning and ice cream on the base.
Yes.
And you think they're coming here for your pomegranates?
No way.
They're messy as hell to eat, man. I can't even.
Not just that, like, I know, like, this sounds weird. A lot of people don't
We
know
don't
this.
eat pomegranates. I don't.
No, but, like, a lot of people don't get it. But you go to those countries, you go to, like, because you're not in the rich areas when you're driving by. You're going and you're, like, seeing, even if it's Jordan or even Iraq or whatever, you're seeing, like animals, livestock get slaughtered in the middle, like, side of the road, because that's the food of the day of that area, and they're just chopping the animal apart to feed. Like, okay, you take the leg, and people don't get it. You don't go to, like, what here, if you want groceries, you want meat, they're going to Costco or Metro or whatever. They're getting meat. There, it's like, no, it's legit. Like, that guy got his cow or whatever it is, and they're going to slaughter it in the middle.
In Afghanistan,
how many animals have you seen get slaughtered?
We see it, but it's actually done where the slaughter man is the
There's a slaughter man, but he's in the middle of the side road, no?
It's got to be done by the local Muslim cleric, right?
Yeah.
So there's
a prayer before, and he slaughters it.
They also bring out for the kids a popcorn machine
to watch it happen.
It's a spectacle.
Yeah.
The kids, like, we don't even tell our kids where meat comes from.
Yeah, here
they go get them some popcorn, and then they watch them slaughter the goats that they raised or the sheep that they raised.
They name that sheep,
but then they watch it, and it's like,
this is what I'm trying to, like, get the
culturally, this whole thing, and they're illiterate, but it's like, where do you begin? Like, how do you make that into a country? Like, it's bringing them democracy when they can't read.
Yeah.
Teaching their 16-year-old recruits 2 weeks to become a policeman. That's what we did.
You're giving them a gun.
A uniform, a badge, and a gun. 2 weeks, they're illiterate. They can't read the laws they're supposed to enforce. And that was what we created, the illusion of an Afghan police force, which is worse than had we said, look, it's going to be a marathon, give everybody a grade 10 equivalency, literacy first, train them.
Something.
And then put them on the streets and then train them like you would a real policeman. Like here, I think it's like 10 months, and then they go through the academies, and then they graduate, then they come on, they work on the force as a junior officer or whatever.
Yeah.
It takes time before we ever expect someone to be a standalone police officer. There, 2 weeks if they were illiterate, 4 weeks if they actually could read, and then they automatically had a position of authority. Like
over everyone else.
You'd be like the sergeant, but that's it, 4 weeks of training. We created a monster. And then what we don't get is that's the face of the government that we created.
Yeah,
they're the guys shaking down everybody at the street corners.
Oh yeah,
they're not even good soldiers. I mean, they're not driven by motivation like the Taliban, who want to die.
Yeah,
this is why there was recently a situation in Moscow where they had this supposed ISIS attack.
Oh yeah, there was an attack, extremist attack. I forgot what it was, but they captured the guys. No,
that's why they're not ISIS.
No, they're not ISIS, but who?
Because they all surrendered.
Oh, ISIS would not have surrendered.
They do not. I was a hostage in Iraq, right?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You were the hostage negotiator.
I was taken hostage.
You were taken. Oh yes, sorry, I do know that. Sorry, I didn't know. I
was taken hostage. The group that took us, myself and a Turkish journalist, they got attacked while we were there by the Americans. So they were fighting the Americans, and they were getting killed like crazy. And they would cheer every time one of their positions got hit from the helicopter gunships. We were in the middle of this. Okay, so this is happening. So these the explosions, and then
so the Americans have helicopters.
They had Apaches coming in, and you can only see the sky above you, but they would come flying through across, and they'd blast these positions, and they were killing a lot of them. And they would every time they would hit a position, and whatever, these guys would all take up the cheer all over, Allah, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, and they were screaming. And I said, like, what are they trying to boost their morale? Like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And my colleague said, no,
No,
they're cheering the creation of
So
their
it's the
martyrs.
last thing they hear before they go up.
But they're cheering the creation. So,
Yeah.
but when you realize how entrenched, like, I mean, we all know that's the mindset. They want to die in battle. They want to die. They're going to go to heaven. We get taken the next morning to it was a bunker position. They had wounded in there. They were moving people around. They had ammunition. This was a legit target. I know that I know that they got drones. I know that they can see all this, and we're not hiding anything. Right? We get pulled in. So I realized we're in a legit target, but we're not human hostages or human shields. One of the women in there, she's yelling back and forth. And because she was Turkmen, my colleague understood her. And she had a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old son. And the 15-year-old had been killed in the fighting. She was yelling at the 17-year-old to get out. He needed to join his brother. He needed to go. He's too young to be in heaven. The mother's instinct was to protect him. She so believed. And this is where we don't give credit. It's always the men are the crazies. The women that truly believe also are a factor. And then when you realize that this is the depth, and you go, okay, that's why. And this group that held us was called Ansar al-Islam at the time.
Ansar al-Islam.
Ansar al-Islam, yeah.
Ansar al-Islam.
ANSAR al-Islam. They morphed and became what became Daesh.
Daesh.
They are those guys.
Daesh is ISIS.
Yeah.
Yep.
ISIS,
Just for
ISIL,
people
whatever.
at home.
Daesh,
ISIL
yeah.
used to be the name but I guess it was bad.
The name we gave them.
The name we gave
Their
them.
name they give themselves is Daesh.
It's because a lot of people it wasn't good for publicity or for marketing purposes because ISIL has the word L in it. And people don't know what L meant. Levant.
Yeah.
Do you understand the Levant is basically Palestine, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq? You understand that, but people don't know what Levant is. So they had to change the name because people don't understand.
That was the name we were giving them. Anyway, so these guys, when they said in Moscow the attack happened, that these guys, when you realize what the mothers think, I mean, these guys would be a disgrace to their families if they all surrendered, and they all surrendered. It wasn't like one guy chickened out. They captured all four of them, and they're saying these guys are Daesh sympathizers from Tajikistan or something. It's like, no, they're not.
No.
Or yeah. They may be Muslims from Tajikistan, but they are not Daesh, and they would have died.
Yeah.
I mean, that's right. Anybody who's been up with these guys and seen what they do and how seriously they take it, this idea that you die in battle isn't, like, again, the next day we were in a car, and the brother of the leader, the emir had been killed. And the brother was in our car.
Amir is a prince.
That was his name, though, the Amir.
Amir in Arabic.
So
his name was Amir.
His name was Amir, but it means prince, and he was the leader. So he was the leader, and he was the Amir. First thing
of the Daesh
this was of Ansar al-Islam, but at the time, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, the brother says, "I know about the promise to let you go, and whatever." And now it's a martyr's promise. When the brother made the promise to let us go, it was a Muslim or Islam promise of sincerity. And now he says that now it's become a martyr's promise. We don't know what to do with you guys because this group had never released a foreigner. So that was a bit of a dilemma. But my instinct when I knew that he was the brother was to say my condolences, sorry about your brother.
Yeah.
And he looks at me like, what are you talking about?
They're happy.
My brother just pitched a no-hitter in the World Series. Like,
because he died as a martyr. He's going to heaven.
In battle, he's gone. I mean, he's where he always wants to be.
Yep.
And you think, we get that. Like we always say, in the Christian world or wherever, always in a better place. And but most of us don't really believe that. There's no sense of joy.
But it's very hard. But it's supposed to bring you peace knowing that they're in heaven. But it's very hard to be like, sorry, you lost your kid. Like my condolences.
But if we truly believe that they're now in that much better place, if they're truly with God, it would be like, oh my God, you must be so happy. He's fun. It's like unless someone's had a chronic illness with severe pain for a long time, and then you say, well, you must be relieved, they're in a better place kind of thing, right? But if it's a sudden thing or whatever, that's never our instinct, even though it's our teachings and we all want to believe that we're all going to heaven where it's utopia and we're with God. It's like we don't say, hey, you must be so happy.
And this was in Iraq.
This was in Iraq, yeah.
Because the Daesh start in Iraq or did it start in Jordan?
It was Syria and Iraq.
Syria and Iraq. Okay, that's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, so
they spilled over from Syria when they were fighting Bashar al-Assad, and then they poured into Iraq, and the Iraqi army just not only did it disappear, they left all the Hummers and all the machine guns and everything. Just like they didn't even attempt to disable the stuff. They left it all fueled up and loaded up, ready to go. I mean, the fix was in.
And then the Daesh came in, took it all.
And then they created this. They
had oil. They had their own currency. Supposedly.
They were marching on Baghdad, and they had to call back up the Shia militia to fight them because the Iraqi army disappeared. The Iraqi army. The Daesh is Sunni. Extremist Sunni. So they poured into the Sunni triangle.
Sunni is the minority in Iraq, no?
Slate, yeah,
Because
Shia majority.
Shia
But there's
majority.
Shia majority, but then you've got Turkmens and you've got
The
Kurds,
Turks are from
and the Kurds are
Kurds are from
divided, and the Turkmens are divided Shia Sunni. So you've got everything splits in different ways.
But they joined up together to fight Daesh.
Everybody,
Or ISIS.
Yeah, so the Kurds fought them. The Shia militia stood up, and then the Americans came in and assisted them. The Russians were helping Assad on their side to fight these guys. Like, it was the weirdest coalition.
It was like
And
everyone
Canadians were involved. In
It was
training
Royal
this.
Rumble.
It's like the Iranian general, because they were brought in. The Revolutionary Guard were brought in to lead the assault on Mosul, which was a city of 1.5 million people. They'd captured. That was their capital. And we were all fighting under this guy's command, and he was the guy that the Americans then killed. And Trump says he was worse than Baghdadi from Daesh. It's like, well, but we were fighting under him, against him. Like, if you don't know the players, get out of the game. So the fact that Canadians were there,
It's just a bad pot. Like, it's
well, we all know that they're somehow worse than everybody else, but everyone wants.
And then you got the Turks. I remember I was having lunch with one of the military guys here, and the Turks said we're bombing the North Syria. They came in just like pummeled whoever was messing with them or getting close to them. I think that was the Kurds. And then,
Russian planes were engaged, but it was the Turks shot down a Russian
I think
plane.
Hezbollah showed up from Lebanon to go into Syria to like.
You've got Turkmens in Syria, you got Turkmens in Iraq, and Turkey kind of uses that connection with these guys as well. I mean, you've got their ethnic Turks in those parts, so it's.
I met a Syrian guy, and I asked him. This is like during the Syrian war. I'm like, how is I'm like, oh, like like this must be rough, like back home and stuff like that. And so my parents are Lebanese.
Right.
My parents were Lebanese, and I'm like, and I said, so for him to tell, he was trying to like tell me, is like, oh, they like love Lebanese people because I guess his area, they're scared of Daesh or ISIS, and the Syrian army would not protect his area or where his hometown is, whatever it is, would not do a very good job protecting it. They would just leave. They would get like a payment and just leave. So then the next day they knew like, oh, Daesh is going to come in or ISIS is going to come in. But they said if somebody came from Hezbollah to his town, he's like, if one person showed up from Hezbollah, you couldn't even, like the locals couldn't even give him a cup of coffee. He didn't take anything the whole time he was there. He just sat there or he like patrolled, and it would scare enough for the whole area to be like safe. He wouldn't take one cup of coffee from the area, but he's like, if the Syrian army would be there or somebody from there, he would take bribes easily and just and the squad would leave. But for some reason, he's like, this one guy would show up, and he, because I guess they're all uniformed. You could just show up. He wouldn't even take a cup of coffee, and the area felt safe, like his hometown, because they know that person was going to do his job.
But people have a tough job understanding. This is where, I mean, a lot of times, like our troops are going to these places, and I mean, I spend a lot of time in these places, so I get it. I mean, the idea that these factions get bribed or they go in and
there's a lot of bribery, I guess, at the local level.
We would know in Kabul something was about to happen because all the security forces disappeared.
Just disappeared, yeah.
Also, like, well, there's no police around.
Yeah.
And they all knew.
And it's quiet.
Their cousins called them and said, "Don't go to work today.
Yeah.
Don't put your uniform on." Right. So it's kind of like all the
tell everyone to stay inside.
All the water's gone out, so there's got to be a tsunami coming. Something's going to happen, right?
So that's what they would feel. The water's gone, so the tsunami's coming.
They know,
and they would just come in. It wouldn't be the fight. He said he's like, the bad guys would just show up, and they had all the corners, and it was just like there was no fight. And again, the police forces that we would train that would go in and they would take stuff from the people. I mean, and people would hate them, right? We actually interviewed one of the police chiefs. Oh, it was the mayor, I guess it was, of Wardak. And the governor's it's a city, it's outside of Kabul, Wardak province. And he said, corruption. What is corruption? If a man's taking so much money as a policeman, like, would you want him not to take some more? Like, what's the problem, right? Yeah, it's known.
We got him on tape saying, "What's the problem? It's not an issue." Then when we walked with him, he did this supposedly spontaneous walk downtown. We walk with him, and we're filming. We go to a coffee house, and
it's like walking with the king. Everyone's
everyone's like, "What's he doing here?" Like, he doesn't do this, right? When of course, and he says how safe it is for him to do this. Meanwhile, he's got like 20 armed guards around him. Like, we just walking, going through. Well, he never paid for anything. Like, I'm watching, and it's like there was no transaction.
He doesn't get it. That cup of coffee is a bribe. That
he takes it and he walks away. It's like Genghis Khan. I mean, you're not going to tell the guy, "Hey, by the way, you owe me some shekels." It's just they don't ask, and he just gets up and goes. They think
it was a gift, but that's called bribery when you have a uniform on.
But if somebody else comes in,
20 guards,
and that was again what created the Taliban was that the warlords were so corrupt and just taking from people that finally it was Mullah Omar. He got robbed by the local police chief's guys, or whatever, and he went back and said, look, to his disciples and said, we need to do something.
Yeah.
So as they started to march, and it was like they stood up to these bullies, they realized that they collapsed.
Yeah.
But for the people, it was like better the honest, fundamentalist guys than these corrupt so-called mujahideen, but are just, they're involved in dog fighting, cockfighting.
Chicken fights, whatever.
Yeah, you see all this stuff. And it's and never mind the slaughterhouse for the kids and the popcorn, and then the dog fighting when they would bring, this was a business, and gambling on this stuff. So there was that underworld where we would ban that stuff too. Right?
Yeah.
We talk about all the things the Taliban banned, music and fun and all these things that they would
but you
enforce.
Banned their dogfighting.
But they allowed, the other guys were allowing the dogfighting, the cockfighting, the gambling, and the boy sex nights on the Thursdays and the stuff that happened to the guys, the pedophilia. And the Taliban said no to all this stuff. And they were trying to crack down on the drugs.
Yeah.
But for us, and we say, well, how could anybody live under these guys, like with all these rules? It's so easy because they don't have any money.
Yeah.
If I don't have any money, it's easy for me not to have any vice.
That's true.
You can't buy that bottle of alcohol.
You can't buy chocolate bars, you're not going to have chocolate bars.
Yeah, it's not going to go into a strip bar because I don't have the $20 to get in.
Yeah.
It's easy for them to say, will I practice what the Taliban preaches? Yeah.
Yeah, I have,
but
I
for
have
us,
lots
it's
of
like,
time to do it.
What do you mean you can't listen to music? Well, where are you going to listen to it? What are you going to listen to it on? What are you going to plug in to recharge it? It's easy. You don't have anywhere to recharge it.
But going back to that, going back to all these people, all these countries, their armies are full. Their military is full. How come Canada, we're having such a recruiting problem, according?
That's because we have it so good here.
Is that why?
In Canada, the States has a problem recruiting, the British have a problem, etc. But Canada, it's hard for the young generation to say, what is the immediate threat to our country? We got the Atlantic and the Pacific and the Arctic protecting us on these sides. We got below us, we've got the world's biggest superpower. We're never going to defeat them.
No.
We recruit everybody. We're not going to defeat them.
No, we're not trying to.
No, but if we have a military, it means we can send it when we want to send it. We can bring it home when we want to bring it home. We're not like the Israeli military or the Turkish military or wherever, where we're living in a neighborhood where we're going to probably have to use them.
Yeah.
To protect it.
So they have to buy domes and they have to upkeep their domes.
Yeah.
I think Jordan has a dome.
We have zero air defense. We don't have any air defense.
Why would we need it?
It's like, and then they say, even our aircraft, we can only protect like 3 of our major cities, not the 6.
They literally have to fly over U.S. to get to us. Alaska, Russia has to fly over that, and Great Britain is not coming here. I don't know who's closest on the other side. A bad guy.
No one's crossing.
No one's crossing the
land, and then what? March
go
inland.
to Nova Scotia, what?
March inland. No,
PEI?
It's not going to happen. And people, if they haven't seen anything, is that a hostile occupation of anybody is going to be costly.
Yeah.
It's what were we thinking? We're going to sit on top of Afghanistan. We have all the money, all the technology, all the stuff. They've got nothing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day,
but they can recruit.
They've still got nothing. Well, they can recruit, all right.
Well, we can't recruit. That's our problem.
We could recruit Afghans and pay them a lot of money too, but they didn't fight for us. It was a joke,
But it'd be nice to for Canadians to be more proud of their military or proud to want to join.
I think it's a generational. I don't think you're going to get that.
No.
And then I also think
TikTok and Instagram, I guess.
But what's happening is technology is keeping up with this change in the human attitude in Canada, in that everything's going unmanned.
Yeah.
You're looking at the war in Ukraine, they're not flying a lot of manned aircraft. They're too vulnerable. They're losing the pilot and the vehicle. So they're creating all these
drones,
cheap drones that are kamikaze drones, like fly them once kind of thing, but they can still take out a $2 million tank.
It's all smart.
Yeah.
You do they basically fly drones like a video game, and these kids are the best video game players in the world. So get them.
So that's what could be Canada's specialty. Is you get these guys, buy them a boatload of drones,
games,
send them to an operational theater. Everyone's going to welcome them because that's what you need.
Yep.
Keep the other guy, see the other guy. There's no place to hide anymore.
Yep.
Take the guy out. You can be a constant nuisance. Do your thing. And
that's a smart idea.
That's what I've recommended that before.
You recommend that?
To keep pace with the fact that we can't find the troops.
And make sure they have nice housings, because these kids want nice places when they join. Make sure they have nice places to live.
Low interest mortgages.
Low interest mortgages for them, yeah.
Oh no!
Or at least nice.
We could do a whole other show on military housing, my friend.
You're gonna come back.
Nobody would object to getting good housing for our troops.
That's what I'm saying.
And if you don't have good housing, what's the incentive for these guys to get in? If they could sweeten the pot and develop housing across Canada, pumping money into local economies.
That's what they should do. Give the military beautiful buildings for their guys to live in.
Especially in major centers like Ottawa.
Yeah, major centers. They need something. You don't need to fill up the whole thing with military if you want. Because military, I know my feedback from them is that they kind of like being with the locals. They don't want to be on like. They don't want to be segregated.
They don't want to be ghettoized.
Yeah, they want to be like. So if you build a nice, beautiful building and you say, okay, like,
but there's a price point to everything. If you're going to lose a little bit of your anonymity, but you're only going to pay $700 a month rent as opposed to $2,500.
Yep.
You'll put up with the loss of anonymity, especially in this today's world when people, whatever their neighbor's doing, they're on their phone anyway, so it doesn't matter. People are getting used to condo living. All the amenities are in one building. They can do.
They're beautiful places. Like if you build them beautiful spots today, like very affordable, and the banks are throwing money at they're called multi-unit buildings. Like there's a big program that the government's been pushing on the CMHC side, 100% financing up to cheaper rates. The government can piggyback off that, like the D&D can piggyback off that and build them 300,000 square feet if they want.
Defense policy update, they didn't have anything specific for actually doing something for the housing on a very short-term basis. And yet
they don't
that
even
should be
need to
the
lose
major
money.
thing. But I think with people, if they would be interested if they said, wait a minute, the military career comes with access to this housing, which
beautiful.
You could even
patios for them.
Put money away if you sign a 10 or 15-year career contract. Put the money aside so that when you walk out, you're stepping into a mortgage with a massive down payment, and they got to be creative, man.
They should, and it has to be more like a hoorah. Like, hey, look, like I don't know. It's I feel like we've been lucky. I didn't know you were explaining off camera that I didn't know there was a big push on downsizing our military at one point after the 80s, right?
In the collapse of the Soviet Union,
yeah, I didn't know that.
So
I didn't
from 91 till 94, they actually paid people, because we were at that point, we were at 90,000 regular forces. Yeah, they paid them, they gave them economic incentives, financial incentives to get out, to leave, because, I mean, it was easier for them to break the contract, pay them out the one time than to keep them on the payroll if we wanted to go down from 90,000 down to 60,000, which we did, and we did it too quickly. Everyone was taking these FRP and then realizing that they had to hire them back, and sometimes they had to hire them back with signing bonuses. Like, they don't do that kind of thing well, but it was, in hindsight, it was very short-sighted.
They could have done it differently. I'm thinking, like, because everyone, Canada was known, I don't know, if this is still the case. As growing up, they would say this is what the saying was, that the best military consists of German officer, American equipment, and a Canadian soldier. For some reason, everybody in the world thought the Canadian soldier, or maybe it is still the case, that was the most well-trained soldier. The Canadian soldier can be / the cook. He can also be the best sniper or whatever it is. He was very well-rounded, is what well-trained. Does that make sense?
So that was year in, year out, was that in NATO, the Canadian soldier was like always the best all around, but the worst equipped. But it was like they were the best soldiers because we did have limited numbers, unlike the Americans, where if you were a specialist, maybe
you only did that.
All you do is drive the vehicle, or maybe all you do is load the whatever. But everyone had to go and everyone had to do those jobs, so everyone could and did do those jobs. So they were better rounded because we didn't have, often we were, even back in those days, we were understaffed. I mean, as far as for exercises and things, we would augment them with cadets or militia and bring them up to speed. So
really.
Yeah, and it was a good system. But
so that was the saying, and it was true.
Yeah. No, it was for sure. And I think the level of our discipline and just things that the Canadians had, because even back in those days was the beginning days of multiculturalism, right? So it's something which we are a multicultural society.
Oh yeah.
So we have a different.
And everywhere in Canada is like that.
Whereas Brits would tend to have a little bit more of a class structure to what they saw things. We were a little bit more like the Americans in that regard, but at the same time we weren't there. So, and we're a bilingual country. I mean, our bilingual forces, we could go to other missions. We could do Haiti. We could do places that we could do things that other
half of
countries
Africa is French almost. Like
exactly.
A big part of it is French.
So we've had missions, yes.
I feel like we could talk for hours. I know that it's time for us, but I really want everyone to know your plug, where they can find you. So Esprit de Corps, you can subscribe to this magazine, Esprit de Corps, and where can people find you online?
So espritdecorps.ca, very easy to find us. Yeah, we're on there. We put up content, not daily, but certainly every week, and the magazine comes out every month.
36-year anniversary, guys.
Yeah.
Half of you guys watching this are not even 36 years old.
We've been around for a long time.
Been around for a long time, and this year's a big year. The magazine is going to be showing a lot of stuff for the 100th year for the Royal Canadian Air Force.
Indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so it's a big year. Pay attention because he's going to give you all the scoops.
Look for On Target, Esprit de Corps
on
channel
Target.
on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, check it out. He'll bring you up to speed of what's really going on.
Every week.
Every week. Thank you so much for coming. Glad to have you on. Hope you want to come back.
Indeed. All right.
Indeed. That's good.